The Georgia sun beat down on Fort Stewart Civilian Military Training Center like a hammer on an anvil. Lena Ward stood at the edge of the formation, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the middle distance. The black scarf wrapped around her neck absorbed the heat, and the long sleeves of her compression shirt clung to her arms despite the 90-degree temperature. "Look at her," whispered Derek Martinez to the woman beside him. "It's like 100 degrees and she's dressed for winter." Sarah Chen snickered. "Maybe she's hiding track marks. Heard the program takes anyone these days." Lena's jaw tightened imperceptibly. She'd heard worse, much worse. The voices were nothing compared to the screams that still echoed in her sleep. Instructor Hayes barked commands across the training yard. Basic drills, child's play, really. Lena moved through them with mechanical precision, careful to appear competent but not exceptional. Blend in, stay invisible. That was the agreement. During the water break, a group clustered near the shade structure. Lena filled her canteen alone, maintaining her usual 10-foot buffer from everyone else. "What's your deal?" Travis Brennan approached, his confidence inflated by 3 weeks of being the top performer in their cohort. "You scared we're gonna see your face or something?" Lena's green eyes flicked to him briefly, then away. "Just prefer to keep covered." "In this heat?" Travis laughed. "That's insane. Unless you're hiding something." He reached for her scarf. Lena's hand shot up, catching his wrist mid-motion with a grip that made him wince. Her other hand secured the fabric at her throat. For a split second, something dangerous flashed across her face, a predator's instinct, barely leashed. "Don't touch me." Her voice was quiet, controlled, but carried an edge that made Travis step back. "Jesus, psycho much." He rubbed his wrist. "Just trying to be friendly. Try somewhere else." The interaction drew stares, more whispers, more distance. Exactly what Lena needed, even if it carved her isolation deeper. That night in the barracks, she lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. 23 other recruits filled the space with chatter and laughter. None of it included her. "I'm telling you, she's weird," Sarah's voice carried from 3 bunks over. "Probably got some criminal record she's trying to hide. Or burns," someone else suggested. "Maybe she was in a fire. Whatever it is, it's creepy." Lena closed her eyes. Let them think what they wanted. The truth was so much worse than anything they could imagine. Her fingers traced the fabric covering her neck, feeling the raised tissue underneath. The seal Trident tattooed there had saved her life once, in a way. It was the only thing she'd been allowed to keep when they erased her from existence. 18 months earlier, Lena Ward had been Petty Officer First Class Ward, assigned to DEVGRU, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Team 6, the most elite counter-terrorism unit in the United States military. She hadn't been supposed to exist in those ranks. Women weren't officially integrated into DEVGRU, not yet. But Lena had proven herself exceptional in ways that made commanders bend rules. Fast, smart, ruthless when needed, and capable of blending into populations that male operators couldn't. Operation Sand Viper had been her 9th mission with Charlie Squadron. Intelligence suggested a high-value target, a bomb maker responsible for 17 American deaths, was operating from a compound in southern Syria. The mission brief called for capture or kill, evidence collection, and exfiltration before dawn. Lena remembered every detail with crystalline clarity. The way the sand felt under her boots, the smell of diesel fuel and cordite, the whispered countdown over the radio. They'd breached at 0237 hours. The compound was larger than satellite imagery suggested, a warren of underground tunnels reinforcing the surface structures. Lena's Team 8 operators, including herself, split into 2 elements. That's when everything went wrong. The explosion tore through the compound center at 0302. Not the controlled detonations they'd placed, but something massive, preset, waiting. The blast collapsed tunnels, brought down walls, turned their tactical advantage into a tomb. Lena had been in the northwestern corridor, separated from her team by 30 meters and 2 walls when the world turned to fire and thunder. The shock wave threw her backward, slamming her into concrete. Rebar pierced her left shoulder. Flames licked across her neck and arms as burning fuel splashed from ruptured containers. She should have died there. Part of her wished she had. Instead, she'd crawled through smoke and rubble, calling names into her radio. Static answered. She found Marcus Chen first, crushed beneath a collapsed ceiling. Then Jake Rivera and Tom Brennan, their bodies unrecognizable. One by one, she'd accounted for all 7 teammates. All dead. The extraction helicopter found her at 0547, unconscious from blood loss and smoke inhalation, lying across the bodies of her brothers in arms. The burns had melted the fabric of her uniform to her skin. The wounds would leave scars that made people look away. But that wasn't why they erased her. In those final minutes of consciousness, Lena had seen something. A man in the compound who wasn't supposed to be there. An American, speaking English to someone on a satellite phone. She'd recorded 30 seconds of conversation on her helmet camera before the blast. That recording proved the operation had been compromised. Someone had sold them out. Someone wearing a uniform. The official report stated the entire team died in the explosion. No survivors. Lena Ward was given a choice. Accept a medical discharge, take a settlement, and never speak of what she'd seen or face charges of desertion and conduct unbecoming. They couldn't have her asking questions. Couldn't have a witness to whatever deal had been made in that Syrian hellhole. So Lena Ward, decorated SEAL operator, became Lena Ward, nobody. A ghost haunting her own life. The nightmares came every night. Her teammates calling her name. Asking why she lived when they didn't. Asking why she'd agreed to the silence that buried them twice. She'd gotten the SEAL Trident tattooed over the worst of her neck scars 1 week after the discharge paperwork cleared. A reminder. A promise. She would carry them with her, even if the Navy refused to. Commander Rafe Collins stepped off the transport helicopter with the easy confidence of a man who'd seen the worst the world had to offer and walked away with stories instead of scars. At 46, he still moved like the operator he'd been for 25 years, economical, aware, dangerous. Fort Stewart wasn't his usual assignment. Collins belonged in Coronado or Dam Neck, training the next generation of SEALs. But the Navy had requested he spend 6 months as a consultant for the Civilian Integration Program, evaluating whether contractors and private military personnel could benefit from modified SEAL training protocols. Translation: they needed a famous face to legitimize a program that was barely scraping by. Collins didn't mind. After his last deployment 3 months in the South China Sea that had tested even his considerable patience, a Georgia summer seemed almost pleasant. Instructor Hayes met him at the landing zone. "Commander Collins, honor to have you, sir. Just Rafe is fine. I'm technically retired." Collins shook his hand. "How's the current cohort?" 24 recruits. Mixed bag, as always. Few standouts, several washouts in progress. They walked toward the training grounds, where recruits were running an obstacle course. Collins watched with the practiced eye of someone who'd designed similar courses. Most of the recruits moved like civilians playing soldier. Adequate, but lacking the economy of motion that separated professionals from pretenders. Then his gaze snagged on a woman near the back of the pack. She moved differently. Her footfalls were precisely placed. Her breathing controlled despite the obvious heat stress from the excessive clothing she wore. When she vaulted a wall, her hands found purchase with the certainty of muscle memory, not luck. "Who's that?" Collins pointed. Hayes followed his gaze. "Ward. Lena Ward. Bit of an odd one. Keeps to herself. Decent performance. Nothing spectacular." Collins frowned. Everything about Ward's movement patterns screamed special operations training. The way she scanned her surroundings even while focused on the course. The controlled aggression in her grip. The absolute absence of wasted energy. Background? Pretty thin, actually. Previous military service listed as supply specialist. Discharged medical. References checked out but were vague. She's been here 3 weeks, hasn't caused trouble. Supply specialist. Collins had met a few hundred supply specialists in his career. None of them moved like Ward. Over the next 3 days, Collins watched her. Not obviously, he didn't want to spook her, but carefully. She was good at hiding it, but not good enough to fool someone who knew what to look for. During hand-to-hand combat drills, she pulled her strikes, deliberately avoiding the killing techniques that clearly wanted to flow through her hands. In the shooting house, she moved through rooms with the systematic clearing patterns of someone who'd done it under live fire. Her weapons handling was flawless, and she was terrified someone would notice. Collins recognized the signs because he'd seen them before in operators dealing with PTSD, with forced retirement, with the impossibility of returning to civilian life. Ward wasn't just hiding her skills, she was hiding her entire identity. The question was why. The sandstorm hit Fort Stewart during the 5th week of training. Not a true desert storm, but a combination of high winds and loose soil from recent construction that turned the air brown and gritty. Instructor Hayes canceled outdoor drills, but Collins insisted on a short formation run. You think the enemy cares about weather? Learn to operate in all conditions. The recruits grumbled but lined up. Lena took her usual position at the back, her scarf secured tightly despite the wind. 3 miles into the run, a gust hit the formation like a physical blow. Dust filled eyes and mouths. Several recruits stumbled, coughing. Collins pressed forward, using the moment as a teaching opportunity about environmental adaptation. Lena felt the fabric tear before she heard it. The wind caught her scarf, and Travis Brennan running beside her for once accidentally stepped on the trailing end. The material ripped free, exposing her neck to the elements and to everyone around her. "Whoa, what is that?" Travis began, but his joke died in his throat. The scars were extensive. Burns had melted and reformed tissue from her jawline down beneath her collar. The skin was mottled pink and white, a landscape of survival. But that wasn't what made the formation stutter to a halt. Inked across the scarred tissue, standing out in sharp black lines against the damaged skin, was a SEAL trident. The eagle, anchor, pistol, and trident were unmistakable. Below it, small but clear, were numbers 6, C, Team 6, Charlie Squadron. Sarah Chen saw it first. That's a SEAL tattoo. Probably fake, Derek muttered. You can get those anywhere. But Commander Collins was already moving forward, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock to something harder to define. He pushed through the cluster of recruits until he stood directly in front of Lena. She'd frozen, one hand reaching for the ruined scarf, her eyes wide with something between panic and resignation. Collins stared at the tattoo, his trained gaze taking in every detail. The inkwork was professional, military grade. The placement over burned scars meant it had been done post-injury, and recently enough that the ink was still sharp. The squadron designation was accurate. He'd seen Charlie Squadron's roster, and the tissue damage around it. Everyone back to barracks, Collins ordered quietly. Now. But Sir Hayes started. Now, instructor. The authority in his voice sent the recruits scrambling. In 30 seconds, only Collins and Lena remained in the wind and dust. Ward. Collins' voice was level, but his eyes were hard. Who authorized you to wear that insignia? Lena's jaw clenched. Her hand still clutched the torn scarf. No one, sir. That's a specific charge. Stolen valor is a federal offense. I'm aware. Then you're also aware that unless you earn that trident, you're looking at serious consequences. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm going to ask you one time, and I need the truth. Did you serve in naval special warfare? The question hung between them. 18 months of silence pressed against Lena's chest. The weight of signatures on documents, of money deposited into accounts, of threats barely veiled as reassurances. But looking at Collins, really looking at him, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not just authority, but recognition. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he knew what it meant to wear that trident, to earn it in blood and pain and impossible standards. Yes, she whispered. I did. Collins' expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. DEVGRU? She nodded. Which team? 6. Charlie Squadron. When? Operation Sandviper. Syria. 18 months ago. Collins went very still. There were no survivors from Sandviper. I know. Lena's voice was hollow. That's what the file says. Collins requisitioned a private office in the administration building, a space usually reserved for security interviews. Lena sat across the desk from him, her scarf back in place despite the closed door. Old habits died hard. The official report states the entire 8-person team was killed due to an unexpected explosion at the target compound. Collins had pulled the unclassified summary on his tablet. No American survivors. Bodies recovered and identified through DNA. 7 bodies, Lena corrected quietly. Mine wasn't there. Because you weren't dead. No, Sia. Collins set down the tablet. I'm going to be direct, Ward. Right now, you're either the most brazen case of stolen valor I've ever encountered, or you're the survivor of a classified operation that the Navy officially says didn't leave survivors. Either way, I need answers. I can't give them. Lena's hands were steady on her lap, but her knuckles were white. I signed documents. Screw the documents. 7 operators are listed as Kaya. If you were there, if you survived, those families deserve to know what happened. They know their people died. That's all that matters. Like hell it is. Collins leaned forward. I served with Tom Brennan's father. Good man. He buried his son with full honors and no answers about how the mission went sideways. If you have information, I don't. The lie tasted like ash. I have scars and nightmares and a discharge certificate that says I was never there. That's all I have." Collins studied her face. He'd interrogated enemy combatants, parsed lies from truth in a dozen languages. Ward was telling the truth about one thing. She'd been ordered into silence. The question was whether that silence served justice or covered it up. "Show me your shoulder," he said abruptly. Lena blinked. "What?" "Your left shoulder. The file mentions Brennan took shrapnel from an exploding support beam. If you were there, you'd have similar injuries from the blast pattern." For a long moment, Lena didn't move. Then, slowly, she pulled her left sleeve up, revealing the continuation of burn scars and a brutal puncture wound that had healed poorly. The scar tissue formed a star pattern, exactly what heavy debris impact would cause. Collins' expression darkened. "You pulled them out. After the blast. You tried to recover the bodies. I couldn't leave them." Her voice cracked slightly. "They were my team." "Jesus Christ." Collins stood, pacing to the window. "Who did this? Who decided you didn't exist?" "People above both our pay grades." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give without violating the terms of my discharge." Collins turned back to her. "You took a deal. They offered you something: money, medical coverage, maybe protection in exchange for silence." Lena said nothing. "What did you see, Ward? What was worth burying you alive?" The office felt too small suddenly. The walls pressed in. Lena could smell smoke again, could hear the screams that her sleeping brain invented because the real ones had been cut too short. "I saw my friends die," she said finally. "I saw a mission go wrong, and I saw that no amount of truth would bring them back." Collins watched her for a long minute. Then he sat down heavily, the fight draining out of him. "You're protecting someone. I'm protecting myself. The deal was the only way I walked away from that compound and kept breathing." "But you're not really breathing, are you?" Collins gestured at the scarf, the long sleeves, the isolation he'd observed. "You're hiding. From everyone, including yourself." Lena stood abruptly. "Are we done here, sir?" "No. Sit down." "With respect, Commander," I said. "Sit down, Petty Officer Ward." The rank, spoken aloud for the first time in 18 months, hit her like a physical blow. Lena sank back into the chair. Collins' voice softened. "I'm not your enemy, but I can't let this go. You're living with stolen valor charges hanging over your head because you can't prove you earned that Trident. Meanwhile, 7 families are living with losses that don't make sense. Someone has to do something. What do you want from me?" "The truth. All of it. Let me help." "You can't." "Try me." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the same stubborn honor that had gotten her into this mess in the first place. The belief that doing the right thing mattered, even when the system said otherwise. "There was an American at the compound," she said quietly. "Before the blast. He wasn't supposed to be there. I recorded him on my helmet cam." Collins went very still. "You have proof of a leak." "Had. The recording was confiscated as part of the classified material. But yes, I saw proof that someone gave us up. And when I tried to report it, I was told the mission never happened, and neither did I." "Names. Give me names." "I can't." "I'm sorry, Commander, but I can't. They made it very clear what happens if I talk." Collins stood again, but this time he moved to the door and locked it. When he returned to the desk, he pulled out a secure phone, his personal device, not military issue. "Off the record," he said. "Everything you tell me right now is off the record. I'm not wearing a uniform. You're not wearing a uniform. We're just 2 people talking about something that maybe didn't happen." Lena hesitated. Then, slowly, she began to talk. Commander Collins spent the next 72 hours calling in favors. 25 years in naval special warfare had earned him a network of contacts that spanned the intelligence community, Pentagon brass, and civilian oversight committees. He used every single one. The official file on Operation Sandviper was sealed under deep black classification, a designation reserved for operations so sensitive that even confirming their existence could compromise national security. Collins couldn't access it directly, but he could read around the edges. Budget allocations showed unusual disbursements to a Syrian contractor 3 days before the mission. Communications logs had gaps, entire hours missing from satellite coverage of the region. And the medical evacuation records from that night showed 1 additional casualty transported to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, a female, burn trauma. No name listed. Lena's ghost was in the file, if you knew where to look. Collins also found something else. Major General Marcus Thornton's signature on the classification order. Thornton was now a 3-star, working out of the Pentagon as Deputy Commander of Special Operations. He'd been the one to seal the file, to approve the no survivors designation, to make Lena Ward disappear. "You're playing a dangerous game," warned Captain Lisa Martinez, an old friend from Collins' early days in the teams. She met him at a coffee shop in Savannah, far enough from the base to avoid casual observers. "Thornton doesn't mess around. If he buried this, he had a reason. 7 operators died, Lisa. Ward nearly died with them. Someone needs to answer for that. Maybe someone already did. Off the books, in ways we'll never hear about." Martinez stirred her coffee, not meeting his eyes. "Sometimes the best thing you can do for a situation is leave it buried." "Is that what you'd want if it was your team?" She looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "No, it's not. None of this is fair, but I can't walk away." Martinez sighed. "What do you need from me?" "Access to the medical records from Landstuhl. Specifically, any female burn victims admitted between 0500 and 0800 on the date of Sand Viper. That's classified. You have friends in medical command." She studied him for a long moment. "You're sure about this? Once you start pulling threads, the whole thing might unravel, including Ward's protection deal." "She's already unraveling. Living like a ghost, hiding from everyone. That's not protection, that's a prison, maybe. Or maybe it's the price of staying alive." Martinez pulled out her phone. "I'll see what I can do. But Rafe, be careful. The people who buried this once won't hesitate to bury it again, along with anyone asking questions." 3 days later, Collins received an encrypted email. "Medical records for patient 2847F, extensive burn trauma, shrapnel wounds, smoke inhalation, psychological distress. Treatment duration, 47 days. Discharge to Naval Medical Center San Diego for continued care, then medical separation from service." The patient's name was redacted, but the DNA sample on file matched the service record of Petty Officer First Class Lena Ward. Collins also found discharge paperwork that made his blood boil. Lena had been medically separated with a bare minimum disability rating, despite injuries that should have qualified her for full benefits. The separation agreement included a non-disclosure clause enforceable through criminal prosecution, and the settlement $175,000, barely enough to cover medical costs for her level of trauma. They'd bought her silence cheap and threatened her into taking it. "Son of a bitch," Collins muttered, reading through the terms. Everything was designed to isolate her, to make sure she couldn't compare notes with other operators or civilian advocates. They'd taken a decorated seal and reduced her to a liability to be managed. He brought the information to Lena during a late evening when the barracks were empty. She read through the files he'd compiled, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have done this," she said finally. "Probably not. But it's done. They'll know someone was digging. They'll come after you. Let them." Collins sat across from her. "The question is what you want to do with this information." Lena was quiet for a long time. "What can I do? The discharge agreement is ironclad. If I violate it, they can prosecute me for everything from breach of contract to treason if they stretch it far enough. Unless we can prove the agreement itself was made under duress and false pretenses." "How?" Collins leaned forward. "The American you saw at the compound. Did you get a clear look at him? Not his face, but I heard his voice. And I saw his watch a Tag Heuer with a custom engraving. I only saw it for a second, but it was distinctive. Could you identify it again?" "Maybe." "Why?" "Because if we can prove there was a leak, if we can show that someone at the command level compromised the mission, then your discharge agreement becomes evidence of a cover-up, not a legitimate legal settlement." Lena shook her head. "That's a hell of a long shot. It's the only shot we have. Unless you want to spend the rest of your life hiding." She looked down at her hands, at the scars that webbed across her skin like a map of everything she'd lost. "I'm tired of hiding," she admitted quietly, "but I'm more tired of fighting a battle I can't win." "Then let me fight it." Collins' voice was gentle but firm. "You've done enough. You survived when you shouldn't have. You kept their secrets when they didn't deserve protection. Now let someone stand with you." Tears welled in Lena's eyes, the first Collins had seen from her. "Why? You don't owe me anything." "No. But I owe Tom Brennan, and Marcus Chen, and every operator who's expected to die with honor, not to be erased like they never mattered." He met her gaze steadily. "You're not alone in this anymore, Ward. Not if you don't want to be." For the first time since the compound exploded, Lena Ward felt something crack in the armor she'd built around herself. Not breaking, not yet, but fracturing enough to let a little light through. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Word spread through Fort Stewart faster than the sandstorm had. By the end of the week, everyone knew Lena Ward wasn't just some weird recruit with bad scars. She was SEAL Team 6, DevGru, the kind of operator that recruitment posters were made from, walking among them like she was nobody. The atmosphere in the barracks shifted overnight. The casual mockery evaporated, replaced by a nervous respect that felt almost worse to Lena. At least mockery was honest. Travis Brennan was the first to approach her, his usual swagger replaced by something resembling shame. Hey, Ward, listen, about before. When I grabbed your scarf, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You shouldn't have grabbed it either way, Lena said evenly. Knowing doesn't change that, right? Yeah. I just wanted to say. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. What you did, what you've done, that's incredible. I had no idea. That was the point. He nodded and retreated, leaving Lena feeling more isolated than before. The mockery had at least been a wall she could hide behind. This reverence was a spotlight she couldn't escape. Sarah Chan was next, bringing an offering of coffee like it was a peace treaty. I'm sorry too, for the things I said, about you being weird, or hiding something bad. I feel like an idiot. Don't. Lena accepted the coffee but didn't invite further conversation. You didn't know. Nobody was supposed to know. But still, it doesn't matter. Lena cut her off gently. I'm the same person I was last week. Nothing's changed. Except everything had changed. The invisible boundaries other recruits had maintained, the careful distance collapsed into an awkward proximity. People wanted to train next to her, to ask questions, to somehow absorb her experience through proximity. It was suffocating. Commander Collins noticed her increasing withdrawal. During a supposedly random equipment check, he pulled her aside. You doing okay? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Lena glanced around the supply room, ensuring they were alone. This is worse than before. At least when they hated me, they left me alone. Give it time. Novelty wears off. Does it? She met his eyes. Because in my experience, once people know what you were, they never see you as anything else. Collins considered this. Is that what you're afraid of? Being defined by your past? I'm afraid of being defined at all. Lena leaned against a shelf of equipment. When I was operational, I knew who I was. I was a SEAL. I was part of something bigger. Then they took that away, told me I'd never been anyone. Now they know the truth, and I'm, what? A curiosity? A cautionary tale? You're a survivor. Everyone keeps saying that like it's a good thing, isn't it? Lena was quiet for a moment. I don't know anymore. Sometimes surviving feels like the worst thing that could have happened. Everyone else got to die heroes. I'm just the one who lived to watch her brothers get buried twice. Collins had no easy answer for that. He'd lost teammates over the years, knew the particular guilt that came with making it home when others didn't, but he'd never been erased from the story of his own survival. I won't tell you it gets easier, he said finally, but it does get different. The weight doesn't go away, but you get stronger carrying it. And if I don't want to carry it anymore, then we finish what we started. We bring the truth into the light, clear your name officially, and give you a choice about what comes next. He straightened. But first, we need to get you back in the game. Lena frowned. What game? The one you were trained for. Collins pulled out a tablet, showing her a classified briefing. I've been authorized to run advanced tactical training for select recruits. Real scenarios, live fire exercises, the works. I want you as my assistant instructor. I can't. Yes, you can. You're the most qualified person on this base for that role, and we both know it. Besides, you'll go crazy if you have to do another week of basic drills. He wasn't wrong. The repetitive training had been necessary for hiding, but now that the secret was out, it felt like wearing a costume that no longer fit. People will talk, Lena said. People are already talking. Might as well give them something worth discussing. Despite herself, Lena felt a flicker of the old fire. The part of her that had thrived on challenge, on pushing limits, on being excellent at impossible things. That part had been dormant so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. When do we start? She asked. Collins smiled. Tomorrow. 0500. And Ward? Lose the scarf. The briefing came through encrypted channels at 0300. Commander Collins read it twice, making sure he understood what he was being asked to do. A terrorist cell with ties to the Syrian operation had resurfaced in Libya. Intelligence suggested they were planning attacks on American assets in the region. The timing was too coincidental to ignore someone was trying to clean up loose ends from 18 months ago. The mission request was unusual. Assemble a small advisory team to support Libyan counterterrorism forces. Officially, civilian contractors, unofficially a surgical strike team that could operate without official acknowledgement. Exactly the kind of gray area operation that DEVGRU specialized in. Collins was being offered the team leader position, and buried in the personnel recommendations was a suggestion that he bring any locally available subject matter experts with relevant regional experience. In other words, bring Ward. He found Lena in the gym at 0530, working through a training routine that would have broken most of the base's recruits. She'd taken his advice about the scarf, leaving her scars exposed as she moved through pull-ups with mechanical precision. "We need to talk," Collins said quietly. 20 minutes later, they were back in the private office, the briefing document displayed between them. Lena read in silence, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she looked up at Collins. "This is the same cell?" "Intelligence thinks so. Different location, but the same players, including possibly the American contact you saw. They want us to finish what Sandviper started. They want a clean solution to a messy problem, and they think we're expendable enough to use." Lena leaned back, processing. "You're not actually considering this." "I am. It's a trap. Has to be. They send us into another compromised situation. We disappear permanently this time, and the whole thing gets buried deeper than before. Maybe." Collins pulled up additional screens. "Or maybe someone at the Pentagon actually wants this cell taken down and thinks we're the best option. Either way, it's an opportunity. For what? Getting killed? For you to face the thing that's been haunting you for 18 months. For both of us to get answers about what really happened at that compound." Lena shook her head. "This is insane. You're asking me to walk back into my worst nightmare on the chance that maybe, possibly, we might learn something useful before we die." "Yes. And if we survive, then you get your life back, your record cleared, your brothers honored, and a chance to stop running." She laughed. A bitter sound. "That's one hell of a pitch." "It's the only one I've got." Collins met her gaze. "Look, I can't order you to do this. You're not under my command. But I'm going either way, and I'd rather have you watching my back than anyone else on this base. Because I'm qualified? Because you're the only one who understands what we're walking into." Lena was quiet for a long time, staring at the briefing document. The photographs of the terrorist cell showed men she didn't recognize, but the locations were familiar. The same desert terrain, the same type of compound, even the same tactical approaches that had gotten her team killed. "I can't go back there," she said finally, her voice small. "I can't be in that place again." "Then we change it." Collins pulled up a map. "We're not repeating Sandviper, we're rewriting it. New approach, new tactics, and this time we know someone might be working against us. And if I freeze, if I'm in the moment and all I can see is my team dying, then I pull you out and we adapt. But I don't think you'll freeze. You're one of the toughest operators I've ever met, Ward. The fact that you're still standing after everything they did to you proves that." She wanted to argue, to list all the ways this could go wrong. But underneath the fear was something else, a need she'd been suppressing for 18 months. The need to finish the mission, to honor her fallen teammates by completing what they'd started. "How many on the team?" she asked. Collins recognized capitulation when he heard it. 4 total. You, me, and 2 others I'm bringing in from Coronado. People I trust absolutely. "When do we leave?" 72 hours. That gives you time to prep and get your head right. Lena stood, her decision made even though every survival instinct screamed at her to run. "I need full equipment access. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it properly. Already arranged. Welcome back to the fight, Petty Officer Ward." She nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Collins, thank you for believing me. Thank me when we get home alive." The Libyan desert looked exactly like Lena remembered Syria looking. Same endless sand. Same pitiless Sunday. Same feeling of being watched by landscape that wanted to kill you. The team had infiltrated through Tunisia, traveling in a civilian vehicle that had seen better decades. Collins drove with the comfortable alertness of someone who'd spent half his life in hostile territory. Beside him sat Marcus Hayes, a communications specialist from DEVGRU who'd worked with Collins for 8 years. In the back, Lena shared space with Jennifer Parrish, a combat medic whose steady hands Lena had trusted within 5 minutes of meeting her. "Target compound is 15 clicks northwest," Hayes reported, checking their GPS against satellite imagery. "No visible activity, But these guys know how to hide. Collins glanced at Lena in the rearview mirror. You good? She nodded, though her hands were clenched tight in her lap. Every kilometer closer to the target was a kilometer deeper into her trauma. The smell of desert dust through the vents made her stomach clench. Talk to me about the layout, Collins said, keeping her focused on the tactical rather than the emotional. What are we looking for? Lena forced herself to think professionally. Syrian compound had underground tunnels, false walls. If this cell is connected, they'll use similar construction. We need to map the space before we enter, check for secondary explosives. They expected a hit last time, Parrish observed. Will they expect one now? Maybe. Depends on whether they know Ward survived. Collins took a sharp turn onto a barely visible track. That's why we're going in quiet. Reconnaissance first, then decision on engagement. They established an observation post 300 meters from the target compound as the sun set. Through night vision and thermal imaging, they watched the location for 6 hours. 3 hostiles confirmed, Hayes whispered. 2 on patrol, 1 stationary in the central structure. No sign of the HVT. Collins studied the compound through his scope. Ward, what do you think? Lena focused her binoculars on the building. Her hands were steadier now, training overriding fear. Western tunnel entrance. See that discoloration in the sand? Same pattern as Syria. There's a secondary access point we're not seeing from this angle. You sure? Yes. And she was. Despite everything, her training held. If we breach the main entrance, they'll funnel us into a kill zone. We need eyes on that western side. Collins made the call. Hayes, swing around for a visual on the western approach. Parrish, set up medevac coordinates with our exfil point. Ward and I will maintain overwatch. As the others moved out, Collins turned to Lena. How are you really doing? Scared, she admitted, but functional. Being here is. It's different than I thought it would be. How so? I thought I'd fall apart. But it's just another op. Target, team, mission. The same things I've done 100 times. Your team would be proud of you. Lena's throat tightened. They'd tell me I was an idiot for coming back. Probably. But they'd also say you were their idiot, and they were glad you had their backs. Before Lena could respond, Hayes' voice crackled over the radio. Boss, you need to see this. Western approach, approximately 20 meters from the primary structure. What is it? Looks like a memorial. Fresh flowers, photos, names carved in wood. One of them is American. Collins and Lena exchanged glances. We're moving to your position, Collins said. They found Hayes crouched behind a sand dune, his night vision trained on a small shrine built against the compound wall. Even from 30 meters, Lena could see the photographs' faces she didn't recognize, except for one, the American from the helmet cam footage. She'd never seen his face clearly, but she remembered the watch, and in one of the memorial photos, it was visible on his wrist. That's him, Lena breathed. That's the American who was in Syria. Collins zoomed in with his scope, photographing the memorial. Looks like he didn't make it out of that explosion either. These could be his people, mourning him, or his co-conspirators, remembering a martyr, Hayes suggested. A door opened in the compound. A figure emerged, walking toward the memorial with something in their hands, another offering for the shrine. Through her scope, Lena watched the figure kneel, placing what looked like a military medal beside the flowers. The person's face turned toward the moonlight. Jesus Christ, Lena whispered. That's Major General Thornton. Collins swung his scope to confirm. Sure enough, even in civilian clothes, the man at the shrine was unmistakably the 3-star general who'd sealed the Sand Viper files. What the hell is Thornton doing here? Hayes hissed. But Lena understood. The pieces clicked into place with awful clarity. He's not here to mourn, he's here to cover his tracks. The American at the compound was his man. The whole operation was compromised from the top, and your team died because of it, Collins finished grimly. They watched Thornton spend 10 minutes at the shrine, his body language suggesting genuine grief. When he returned to the compound, the team waited another hour before Parrish rejoined them. We need extraction, Collins said quietly. This just became bigger than a counter-terrorism op. We're looking at corruption at the highest levels of command. We can't just leave, Lena argued. Thornton is right there. We could get killed trying to apprehend a general in a hostile country with no backup. Collins cut her off gently. This isn't a combat mission anymore, Ward. It's evidence gathering. We document, we report, and we let the system handle it. The system buried me once already. Then we'll make sure it can't bury this. Collins began photographing everything with a specialized camera that embedded encrypted metadata. "But we do this smart. Your team died because someone made reckless decisions. We're not repeating that mistake." Lena wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Charging in on emotion was exactly what had gotten her team killed the first time someone at the command level had made desperate choices to protect a compromised asset. They extracted before dawn, carrying documentation that would blow the Sandviper cover-up wide open. In the vehicle heading back to Tunisia, Lena finally let herself process what they'd discovered. "My team died protecting Thornton's spy," she said to no one in particular. "We were sent into a compromised situation to eliminate witnesses to a deal that was already falling apart." Parrish reached over, squeezing her shoulder. "Your team died as heroes, doing their jobs. The people who betrayed them are the ones who should carry the guilt. Doesn't make them any less dead." "No," Collins agreed. "But it means their deaths weren't meaningless. What we found tonight, that's the justice they deserved." The hearings at the Pentagon took 3 months. Behind closed doors, investigators from Naval Criminal Investigative Service and the Department of Defense Inspector General's office reviewed the evidence Collins and Ward had brought back from Libya. Thornton tried to spin the narrative, claimed the operative in Syria had been a deep cover asset, that the explosion was enemy action, that Ward's survival had been kept secret for her own protection. But the documentation didn't support his story. Financial records showed payments to Syrian opposition groups. Communications logs proved he'd been in contact with the compound before the explosion, and testimony from other officers revealed a pattern of unauthorized operations designed to advance Thornton's career at any cost. The final verdict came down on a cold January morning. Major General Marcus Thornton was stripped of his rank, dishonorably discharged, and remanded for court-martial on charges of misconduct, conspiracy, and reckless endangerment resulting in death. 7 families finally learned why their loved ones had died. Lena sat through the proceedings with a numbness that gradually thawed into something resembling peace. Not happiness, she'd never be happy about losing her team, but a sense that the debt of silence had finally been paid. The Navy's official statement came 2 weeks later. Operation Sandviper would remain classified, but Petty Officer First Class Lena Ward's service record would be restored and honored. Her discharge would be amended from medical separation to honorable retirement with full benefits, and the names of all 8 team members, including hers, would be added to the National Navy SEAL Memorial. The ceremony at Fort Stewart was small. Commander Collins had arranged for it to be low-key, understanding that Lena still struggled with public attention. But when she stood on the parade ground, wearing her dress uniform for the first time in 18 months, she wasn't alone. Families of her fallen teammates had made the trip. Tom Brennan's father stood in the front row, tears streaming down his face as Lena received her Trident again, not a tattoo this time, but the actual insignia, pinned over her heart by the commander of Naval Special Warfare himself. "Your courage under fire, your sacrifice, and your dedication to the truth honor the Navy and the SEAL community," the Admiral said, his voice carrying across the formation. "Welcome home, Petty Officer Ward." The applause from the gathered crowd was genuine. The recruits who'd once mocked her now stood at attention, witnessing what real service looked like. Travis Brennan, Tom's younger cousin, Lena suddenly realized, saluted with shaking hands. After the ceremony, Tom's father approached her. William Brennan was a retired Marine, his back straight despite his 70 years. "Miss Ward, Lena, I wanted to thank you." "Sir, I'm so sorry." "Stop." He held up a hand. "You did everything you could. You tried to bring my boy home, and when they wouldn't let you tell his story, you carried it alone. That takes a different kind of courage than what they give medals for. I should have done more. You did enough. You survived. You kept trying. And now Tom's death means something again, not just a classified footnote in someone's career." He pulled her into a hug that she didn't deserve but desperately needed. "Thank you for not giving up." Commander Collins found her an hour later, sitting alone by the training grounds where this had all started. She'd removed the dress uniform jacket, sitting in her undershirt with her scars on full display. "How do you feel?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. "Lighter," Lena admitted, "and heavier at the same time, if that makes sense." "Perfect sense. The truth has weight, even when it sets you free." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching recruits run drills in the distance. Lena recognized several of them, people who'd mocked her, feared her, and ultimately learned from her. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "That's up to you. You have full retirement benefits, medical coverage, and enough of a settlement from the Navy's misconduct to live comfortably. Or Collins pulled out a folder. You could come work for me. Doing what? Training the next generation. Real training, not the sanitized version. I'm setting up an advanced tactical program for special operations preparation. I need instructors who understand what it really costs, who won't let candidates think it's all glory and action movies. Lena took the folder, scanning the proposal. It was everything she'd been trained to do, but teaching instead of executing. Passing on knowledge instead of using it. I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach anyone anything, she said quietly. You're the most qualified person I know. You survived the worst-case scenario and still found a way back. That's what these kids need to learn, not just how to fight, but how to keep going when everything goes wrong. And if I freeze up, if I can't handle being around people who remind me of my team, then we work through it. But Lena Collins turned to face her fully. You've spent 18 months hiding from the world because you thought you didn't deserve to be in it. That ends now. You earned your place here. You paid for it in blood and pain and loss. Don't let Thornton steal anything else from you. Lena looked down at her hands, at the scars that would never fully fade. But they weren't just marks of trauma anymore. They were proof of survival. Evidence that she'd walked through fire and kept walking. When do I start? She asked. Collins smiled. How about tomorrow? 0500. And Ward, you can leave the scarf at home. That evening, Lena stood in front of her barracks mirror for the first time without flinching. The scars that mapped her neck and arms were visible, undeniable, impossible to ignore. But they were hers. Part of her story, not the whole thing. She traced the Trident tattoo one more time, remembering the day she'd gotten it. A promise to carry her team with her, to never let them be forgotten. I kept my promise, she whispered to the reflection. You're home now. We're all home. The next morning, as the sun rose over Fort Stewart, Lena Ward walked onto the training grounds without a scarf, without hesitation, and without shame. Her scars caught the early light, and the sealed trident gleamed on her chest. The recruits who saw her come to attention instinctively, recognizing not just rank or reputation, but something more fundamental, a warrior who'd earned every step she took. Commander Collins met her at the center of the grounds. Ready to get to work, Instructor Ward? Lena looked out at the faces watching her, young, uncertain, hopeful. The next generation of warriors who would face their own impossible odds. Ready, sir, she said. And for the first time in 18 months, she meant it. The legend hadn't died in that Syrian compound. She'd walked through the flames, carried the truth through silence and shame, and emerged on the other side scarred. Yes, but unbroken. The whispers about the woman who hid her scars had transformed into something new. Stories about the SEAL who survived the impossible and came back to teach others how to do the same. In the end, that was the real victory, not the restoration of her record or the justice served, but the reclamation of her identity. Lena Ward was no longer defined by what had been taken from her, but by what she'd chosen to become. A survivor, a teacher, a warrior, and always, forever, a SEAL.